Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MIT Human Insight Collaborative's annual event. I'm Anantha Chandrakasan, MIT's provost, and it is great to see all of you here today. This is going to be an exciting day. MITHIC is about inspiring our community to think differently and work together in new ways. It's about embedding human-centered thinking throughout our research, innovation, and education. What you'll see today is that 1 year in, MITHIC is off to a strong start, advancing work across the Institute that broadens our perspectives on global challenges. After the keynote address this morning from Sloan Dean Rick Locke, we'll have 2 morning sessions and 2 afternoon sessions. These sessions will highlight the remarkable work sparked or supported by MITHIC. MITHIC is supporting efforts like the Compass Initiative, which you'll hear about in a little while. Led by Professor Lily Tsai, the Compass Initiative is helping our students grapple with questions that don't come with simple answers. Questions like, what do we value? What are our obligations to each other? MITHIC is already complementing the work of other strategic initiatives, such as the MIT Generative Impact Consortium. You'll hear this afternoon about the ethical deployment of artificial intelligence for healthcare applications and the fascinating work at the intersection of AI and anthropology. Along with other projects that will be discussed in today's sessions, you'll get a clear sense of MITHIC's impact that cuts across disciplines and departments. When the program wraps up at 2 o'clock, we'll have a reception. I hope you'll stick around and continue the conversation there. I particularly want to thank the MITHIC team for their hard work to pull this day together, the faculty lead, Kirill Makin, and staff members, Jen Alton and Elena Nosilia. Also want to thank the team in the Office of Innovation and Strategy, which support all strategic initiatives. MITHIC and other strategic initiatives would not be possible without the incredible support and leadership of President Sally Kornbluth. It is really her vision of what we can accomplish when we unite our strengths together. And with that, it is my distinct privilege to welcome on stage President Kornbluth.
Thanks, Anantha. I'm actually really excited to see everyone here. This is fantastic. And, you know, Anantha gave a bunch of thank yous, which I will echo. And of course, I have to add to that a big thank you to Anantha for all his work and support. So MITHIC's actually the first of our truly institute-wide initiatives or collaboratives. And when we launched MITHIC last fall, I had talked a lot about doing big things together, and I believe that this is even more important now than it was earlier. Because of a suite of federal actions, which I know you're all aware of, universities across the country are navigating a difficult and constantly changing landscape. And at MIT, we are doing everything we can to stay the course, and I believe that our best response to these ongoing challenges is to just simply keep doing our very best work. MITHIC and all of the presidential initiatives are a vital part of our strategy to advance excellence within and across high-impact fields, from healthcare, climate, education, AI, manufacturing, quantum. And over the past year, MITHIC has opened up an incredible range of opportunities for faculty and students to ask new questions and arrive at better, bolder, and more nuanced answers, grounded in the wisdom of humanities, arts, and social sciences. MITHIC also serves as an inspiration to a new generation of philanthropists, alumni, and friends who want to join our efforts to drive new and unexpected collaborations. the ones that spark ideas and solutions that would not have come about otherwise. And clearly, this strategy is beginning to work. Last fall, we received 89 submissions in response to our initial call for Mythic proposals. Thanks to support from alumni friends, all 5 schools and the college, we funded 31 projects representing 22 units across MIT. And ingenious ideas for research under the Mythic umbrella have continued to flow. We put out a second call in September and received nearly 80 more proposals, which are now being reviewed for funding in 2026. And as we keep raising money, we hope that funding rate will continue to go up. The enthusiastic response shows that there's an immense desire across MIT for pioneering research that blurs the boundaries between disciplines and spurs exciting new collaborations. So let me just highlight one example, and you'll be hearing about many today, the Living Climate Futures Lab. As you'll hear today, this lab works with people in communities from Massachusetts to Mongolia who are grappling with the impacts of climate change on their daily lives, on health and food and security and housing and on jobs. The lab brings together environmental scientists and engineers with anthropologists, urban planners, historians, experts in indigenous research methods, and artists. This amazing array of knowledge and experience reflects a very MIT attitude. If we're hot on the trail of an important and interesting problem, we will gladly ignore all the fences that typically keep academic disciplines apart. Like all of the projects that are being supported by Mythic, the Living Climate Futures Lab also embodies MIT's singular brand of excellence, collaborative, hands-on, and deeply relevant to the world and the people around us. Before I close, I want to echo again some of the thanks, the faculty leaders who have envisioned the enormous potential of elevating the human-centered fields at MIT. I mentioned Anantha, but I also have to mention our dean, Shastine Augustine Rayo, and the Shast Associate Dean and Mythic's founding faculty lead, Carol Macon. And after all this time, I think I'm finally pronouncing your name correctly. Maybe I can mangle it a few more times, but I think I got that right. I also want to thank all of you who are here to celebrate MIT excellence across the full spectrum of human wisdom. So speaking of wisdom, I now want to introduce you to our keynote speaker, Rick Locke. He's the John C. Head III Dean of the MIT Sloan School of Management. And actually, I would defy any school anywhere to have the Dean of the School of Management giving the keynote address at a humanities collaborative. I think that is really emblematic of the interdisciplinary nature and the institute-wide nature of this initiative. Rick's wide-ranging experience and accomplishments include serving as the Dean of Apple University, the Provost of Brown University, and advisor to organizations from Nike to the US Department of Labor. But he began his career at MIT, earning his doctorate here and heading up the Department of Political Science. Now, I've come to know Rick, and actually I knew Rick for a very long time because we were both provosts at the same time, and I think we met every week during COVID to talk about important things like masking. So, we've had a lot of conversations. He has always impressed me with his intellectual breadth, way beyond COVID maneuvers and fresh ideas. He'll speak to us today about the human side of the enterprise, and then he'll sit down for a chat with Dean Rayo. So please join me in welcoming back to MIT, Rick Locke.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Sally, for that nice introduction. Thank you all for inviting me to speak with you today. It's a genuine honor to be here, to see some familiar faces, but also to meet some new people. Today, what I'd like to do is share with you some early reflections on the future of management education. And what I'm going to do is divide my brief remarks into 3 parts. First, what I'd like to do is describe how this is a pivotal moment for the world of business, and as a result, for management education, given some significant challenges underway. Second, As the still relatively new dean of the MIT Sloan School of Management, I'd like to offer some thoughts on how MIT Sloan, by becoming even more embedded in the MIT ecosystem, can lead in addressing some of these challenges and in reinventing management education. And finally, I'd like to provide an example of how we can collectively, all of us, do this exciting work by discussing the challenges but also the opportunities posed by generative AI and how bringing back the human side of enterprise is key to how we manage this moment. So let me begin with the challenges, which are also opportunities. In recent years, the context within which business has been operating for decades has changed in significant ways. Now, I'm going to present a highly stylized description of that context and the changes underway. The reality, of course, is that much, much more nuanced. But let me just give you the less nuanced portrait of things. You know, over the last several decades, business has operated in a more or less flat world where geopolitical and cultural differences across countries and regions were eroding. A world in which innovations in communications, logistics, design, and the spread of global supply chains allowed firms to produce more or less anything, anywhere, usually driven by low input and labor costs, and then sell their products or services across the globe in an array of markets with little concern for trade restrictions, tariffs, cultural barriers, or even the true cost of externalities like carbon emissions. Again, this is a very highly stylized description of the context. The world was never as flat as Thomas Friedman once argued. It was always much more lumpy. But the assumption that we were living in a globalized world with a more or less frictionless flow of capital, of products, of people, of services, was one that was shared by many business and political leaders. This model of business has been challenged in recent years by a variety of forces, including the rise of geopolitical tensions between countries. And we can talk about the US and China, but of course it's more than just those two countries that have led to the rise of trade barriers and the reconfiguration or even diversification of global supply chains. Now, that reconfiguration of supply chains happened before the current moment. It happened during the first Trump administration. It happened because companies were thinking about their global carbon footprint. It happened because of the pandemic and the need to have more resilient supply chains. But recent efforts have really accelerated this process of trying to sort of reconfigure and change global trade and commerce. The second pressure, and this is one that we don't talk about as much, but I think is equally important, is the reemergence of regulation, not just in the EU, but in the US and different states and in other countries as well. Think about the Digital Services Act or the Digital Markets Act and what that has done for especially the digital economy. This is shaping how companies make and sell their products and services around the globe. Third, there's a growing awareness, and I think this is a good thing, and concern over climate change and its impact on society, and thus the need to develop low-carbon products and business practices, business models in the near future. Fourth, there are these emergence of, and maturity, or maybe not maturity, but evolution of disruptive new technologies like AI that will impact existing business models, work arrangements, and employment patterns. And finally, there are changing employer attitudes towards work, towards work-life balance, and expectations they have of their employers. These and other challenges threaten to upend existing business models and management practices in the US and around the world. I believe that we are in a pivotal moment when individual firms and even entire industries need to rethink their business models in ways of operating in the world. And there is no clear, already established path for them to follow. In enterprises across the world, leaders are trying to figure out how to operate in a more regulated and politicized environment, how to reduce carbon emissions while still making innovative products and taking advantage of their globally dispersed suppliers and customers. how to manage a workforce with new demands and new expectations, and how to integrate the promise and potential of generative AI into existing and future products, services, and business models in ways that will increase their company's competitive value and not undermine it. And the sad truth is that most management schools, business schools, cannot guide these leaders, since we too are stuck in the past. To be completely frank, most management business schools have been teaching the same material in the same way for decades, not adapting our models, our frameworks, and our theoretical approaches to the dramatic changes underway in the world. And the students know it, and so do their future employers. Now, I don't expect this crowd to be a regular reader of a magazine called Poets and Quants. This is a magazine that talks about business schools. But last July, late July, an article came out in Poets and Quants, basically quoting all these business school students at Graduate School of Business at Stanford, where the students were basically saying, we're not learning anything. We're not learning any skills. About a month ago, a similar article in the same magazine came out about Wharton, where they basically argued the same thing. These professors are teaching the same things that they've been teaching for decades. We're not learning any new skills. Now, I was, as the new dean of Sloan, greatly relieved that they were writing about others and not about us. But the fact is, they could have been writing about us. This is an industry problem. This is not a school or particular university problem. And this is something that we have to take on head on. But I believe that these and other broad challenges create exciting opportunities for MIT Sloan to build on and expand its unique assets, to play a leadership role in addressing these challenges, and in the process, reinvigorate management education, management research, and practice. Now, I know this sounds like a sales job, but I really believe it. So why Sloan? Why do I think this is such a great moment for MIT and MIT Sloan? And I believe it's because we possess several amazing assets. The first is that we have a world-class research-oriented faculty, many of them already working on some of the important issues of the day, whether it's health or climate or advanced manufacturing or the future of work or Gen AI or any of the other key issues. We have people already working and collaborating across the university on these issues. We have amazing faculty, incredible students, and an incredibly dedicated professional staff. And our curriculum has traditionally blended theory and practice, hand in mind, which is exactly how adults learn. So we have these incredible assets in our people and in the curriculum that we have already. Secondly, and this is the most important asset I think we have, is our embeddedness in MIT and in the MIT ecosystem. Across this great university, colleagues are conducting cutting-edge research on some of the key challenges I described earlier, whether it's climate change, healthcare, advanced manufacturing, generative AI, and so much more. By becoming even more embedded in this ecosystem, and what does that mean? What it means is more collaborative research, more collaborative teaching between Sloan and the rest of the Institute. I believe that MIT Sloan can help translate innovations in these and other areas into new enterprises, into new business models, into new policies, into new ways of thinking about the world and the economy. This is Sloan's role in the MIT ecosystem, is to play that translational management role. And let me just elaborate on this. As I said, MIT Sloan faculty already very actively involved in many of the presidential initiatives. When I think about the Gen AI or climate, even MIT HIC, we have Sloan faculty who are involved in either the steering committees or co-leading these things. And this is great. This is a way that we're bringing people together. But we can do so much more. And the way that I think about this is, how can MIT Sloan lower the barriers so that students from all over the Institute can take our courses, maybe even earn a degree? How can MIT Sloan begin to develop with other parts of MIT cutting-edge certificate programs or other courses of study where we're bringing together people from engineering and science and humanities with Sloan to actually address some of these big issues? I think there's so much that we can do, which is not only good for MIT, but it's a way of really reimagining management education and management research. Now, when I think about this, I think about increasing MIT Sloan's embeddedness within MIT means more than simply deepening the ties between, say, the technical and the commercial sides of campus. It also requires that MIT Sloan work more closely with colleagues in SHAS and reinvigorate its long-standing tradition focused on the human side of enterprise. As many in this room may or may not know, MIT Sloan has a long and distinguished history of focusing on the human dimensions of business. In its early days, during the post-war boom, as U.S. enterprises were growing and trying to figure out how best to engage and motivate their employees, Sloan professor Douglas McGregor published an important book called The Human Side of Enterprise. It was published in 1959. And in that book, McGregor outlined Theory X and Theory Y, opposing theories describing why people work and how they should be managed. Theory X assumes that workers are inherently unmotivated, and this leads to a top-down style of management based on compliance and a mix of carrots and sticks to reward or to punish employees. Theory Y, on the other hand, assumes that employees are intrinsically motivated to do their best work and to contribute to the organizations that employ them. This leads to a very different management style, one that empowers workers, that gives them greater discretion over their jobs, and cultivates higher levels of engagement. McGregor was only one of a long list of MIT Sloan faculty who worked on this more human-centric approach to management. And I think of the work of Lottie Balin or Ed Schein on organizational culture, or of Tom Kochen, Bob McKersey, and Paul Osterman on what they called high-performance work systems. They fall clearly in this tradition. I see my own research on labor standards in global supply chains following this tradition, and faculty and students in what Sloan now calls the Work and Organizational Studies Group continue this important line of research, as do our colleagues at the MIT Leadership Center, which is also based on Sloan. And so for Sloan to deepen and expand this work, we need to increase our collaboration with colleagues in SHAS and across the Institute. And this is why MITHIC is so important for MIT, but also so important for MIT Sloan. I believe that tapping into every part of MIT, everything that has MIT to offer, would help MIT Sloan chart the future, to shape how new technologies like AI will reconfigure industries and careers, how new enterprises will be created and run, how individuals will work and live, how business practices will become more sustainable, and how national economies will develop and adapt. It's an incredibly exciting time to be at MIT, to be back at MIT. So let me illustrate, and I'm almost done, let me illustrate how we can together do this important work by highlighting some important research on Gen AI that is already taking place at both MIT and at MIT Sloan. Now, as you all know, Americans today are both ambivalent and anxious about AI and its impact on their jobs, on the economy, and on society as a whole. Many see opportunity. 62% of respondents in a recent Gallup survey believe that AI will increase productivity. 53% believe that it will lead to economic growth. But still, 61% of respondents at this Gallup survey, think that AI will destroy more jobs than it will create, and nearly half, 47% of the respondents, think that it will destroy more businesses than it will recreate. These are real concerns from an anxious population, voiced at a time of great economic and political uncertainty. This is a critical moment with enormous consequences for the workforce, for organizations, and for humanity. And as the latest generation of artificial intelligence leaves its nascent phase, we are confronted with a choice about which path to take. Will we deploy AI to eliminate millions of jobs across the economy, or will we use it to empower the workforce and enhance our human capabilities? Fortunately, colleagues at MIT and MIT Sloan are already doing important work to show the viability of the second path. For example, in their 2023 book, Power and Progress, Daron Acemoglu and Simon Johnson argue for recharting the course of this technology so that it promotes shared prosperity and complements rather than substitutes for the work of humans. Writing later with another MIT colleague, David Otter, the pair argue that the direction of AI development is a choice and argue that leaders and educators must choose a path of machines in service of minds. But what does this mean in the context of today's workforce and workplace? How do we create organizations and paths that travel this human-centric, worker-friendly path? Part of the answer lies in research from MIT Sloan professor Roberto Rigobon and postdoctoral researcher Isabella Loiza. These scholars analyzed 19,000 tasks across 950 job types and found 5 human capabilities that are increasing in value as AI advances. These are empathy, presence, opinion, creativity, and hope. This EPIC framework points us on a path towards upskilling workers with a focus on what they call the fundamental qualities of human nature. These are simply a few of the examples of the exciting, important work taking place across MIT. There's so much more work taking place, but work that allows us to see the choice and begin to imagine how we take that second choice that enhances our humanity and empowers people. This work suggests that job loss and deskilling are not inevitable outcomes in this new era of AI. From Theory X and Theory Y to Rigobon and Louisa's important work. I've now lost my notes. I'll find them. Here it is. Insightful EPIC framework to the new educational paradigms made possible through initiatives like Universal AI that was recently released by the MIT Open Learning Initiative. MIT and MIT Sloan have a history of charting and paving pathways to an exciting and productive future of work that not only includes humans, but makes the most of our humanity. Together, we can invent this future. Thank you very much.
We're going to sit in the middle?
Yeah.
Okay. So imagine that you're dean of Shas and you learn that someone like Rick is going to be your fellow dean, someone you're going to be able to brainstorm with, someone who is going to share insights. I mean, it's extraordinary. It's extraordinary to have you as a fellow dean.
Likewise.
So you talked a little bit about ways in which the world has changed and business schools have been slow to adapt. I was hoping you could speak about that more broadly. So as you said, we're at a pivotal time. How do you think higher education more broadly should adapt to the time?
Big question. I don't have all the answers. I don't have a comprehensive answer to that question. But I think we have fragments of what could maybe be woven together into an answer. And that's why I think this is such an important moment at MIT and for MIT Sloan because of the assets that we already have. A couple things. One is for education. I don't think the traditional model of education of just sort of being in a room, passively sitting while the professor, fountain of knowledge, is spewing on and on, works. I don't think it's worked for a long time, but it certainly doesn't work today. Instead, I think that we should reimagine education using what we already do well, which is we have great work that's taking place in the classroom, in the labs, et cetera. That should continue. We got really good at using technology to do virtual learning, online learning, whether it was synchronous or asynchronous. And again, we have open learning and other assets at MIT that continue to do that. And we have this tradition of what we call at Sloan action learning, which is being in the world, whether it's the MISTI programs that exist in SHAS or some of the other more clinical work that takes place across the university, or what we call action learning at Sloan. I think that's really important because it's actually embedding students in real organizations with real challenges and applying what they learn in the lab, in the classroom, et cetera, to try to solve those problems, which allows them to actually, as we know, because we're teachers, that's when you actually figure out what you know. It's when you have to actually teach it. So it's going to help them learn that, but also, even more importantly, it's going to show them what they still don't learn, so that they come back hungry to learn more. And it's those cycles, repeated cycles, that are important. We have this, but they're not connected. And I think we have to connect the dots. And when I think about this, I think that an education at MIT Sloan, but I would say it should be for MIT as a whole, should be a seamless experience. It should be something that takes place on campus, off campus, in person, virtually, synchronously, asynchronously, et cetera. And if we can connect those dots, then what we can do is have students learning in really, really interesting ways, and that will, I think, allow us to actually meet the challenges that I talked about. I mean, the dream that I have is that we have a student from MIT who is maybe, since I was one of the founders of the MIT Italy program, I'm going to use that as an example, they're in Bologna. They're working for, doing an internship at Ferrari or something like that. They are taking an Italian language or literature course at the University of Bologna, but they're also online taking some classes here so they can make progress towards their degree. So they don't have to sort of have the on-off switch. They're connected. We can do that because we have the assets. And I think if we do that, we can better meet the needs of our students, better meet the needs of their employers, future employers, and allow us to actually have even greater impact in the world.
Yes, I love that vision. And I mean, here's one way of emphasizing why I think you're so right that the model can't just be a professor spewing information on students. In the age of AI, to a first approximation, all information is available to everyone always. So of course that can't be the model. Now, here's a way of getting deeper into this issue. So, as emerged in your presentation, AI is changing the nature of the labor market. It's changing what companies expect of employees. And of course, that affects higher ed because it affects the ways in which we can bring value to students who are hoping to get jobs and really to students who are hoping to find a path to financial stability in their lives. So could you say a little bit more first about how you expect the labor market is going to change and what the paths to financial stability of the future are going to look like? And secondly, what MIT can do to meet that challenge?
Yeah. So the way that I understand what might be happening to the labor market is informed by our wonderful colleagues, whether it's David Otter and the work that he does, Daron, Simon, et cetera. And it seems like this is a version, maybe a more extreme version of what we've seen before, where certain skills will be automated or eliminated as a result of AI, and others won't. And in the past, those have been more task-oriented, kind of routine jobs. Now people are thinking about what they may be, whether it's a lower, more kind of basic analytical, sort of analyst kinds of jobs as opposed to others. We have to see where that goes. But if that's true, that some of the things that you can do with generative AI, you don't require the basic level of people who are doing just a lot of grunt research and easy analysis, then what can we do for them? And this is what we've been doing at MIT Sloan in the last several months is, the genie is out of the bottle in terms of Gen AI. You can't put it back. It's not going to be like, oh, you're cheating. You can't use it. I think that's not the way to think about it. I think what we have to do is how do we use this incredibly powerful tool to enhance our human capabilities, our reasoning, our analytical skills, our decision making. And so what we're doing at MIT Sloan is we're making sure that everyone, students, but also staff and faculty, understand the basic, are literate enough about the basic models and tools. So we do already a boot camp for orientation of our master's students, but we are now inviting everyone in the community to use the universal AI that was recently released as a way of sort of being educated. Then what we're doing is we're weaving AI into all our courses. So we already have a whole bunch of electives that are really, really great, but rather than just have those electives, how do we weave in the basics of AI into finance, into marketing, into strategy, into operations? And so it's not instead of, it's actually showing how you use those tools to enhance your human decision-making, reasoning, analytics using this tool. And we're going to do it this way because I think that way we lean into this technology, we equip our people for the future of future developments of the labor market. We lean into the MIT brand, which I think is very, very important to distinguish our graduates from others. And it allows us to actually design curriculum that can quickly be adapted since AI is moving so quickly. So if we had the module around AI as opposed to the 12-week course, it's much easier to adapt that, layering in on top of the finance, strategy, ops, et cetera. So that's how we're thinking about it. And I would say, based on conversations that we've all had as faculty, that thinking about it that way might be a good way across the disciplines.
I love it. I mean, you would think that if you are a company and you're hiring, the absolute first thing you want is for the people you hire to be not just literate in AI, but they be the kind of person who absolutely.
Yep.
The kind of person whose work is empowered by AI. So I totally agree about that. Now, what about expected disruptions in just what an entry-level position might look like? So here's an example that I find both illuminating and scary. So a law firm, entry-level people in a law firm up to now have done tasks that in many cases can be done better and certainly more cheaply using ChatGPT. So that suggests that we might move to a system in which a law firm is just going to hire fewer entry-level people. But of course, the world still is going to need top lawyers. So there still is a path to getting there, but it just becomes much more narrow. Yep. So how do we in higher education prepare for a world in which these paths are going to be much narrower than they are today?
It's a great question, and we're already seeing that.
We're already seeing that,
and not just in the legal profession, but even in the management area. It used to be that some of the top consulting or investment banking companies would come and they would hire 20 or 30 of Sloan graduates at a time. Like every year was these huge cohorts. They still come. And they're hiring a number of our students, but in smaller numbers because they don't need as many of them as they used to. Exactly. Because of the more or less automation of some of those tasks because of AI. And so let me talk about how I think we should operate at MIT and then whether or not that's a model for higher education in general. It may or may not be. The way that I think about this for MIT is how do we really produce students that understand the technology, that have deep technical or functional knowledge, and know something about how to manage people, how to engage with people, how to run organizations, et cetera. And if we do that, that will be unmatched. And so when I think about MIT Sloan being even more embedded in the rest of MIT, and thinking about innovative new courses or certificate programs, maybe even degree programs, I think about like how might we bring together, engineering students and faculty working on fusion with Sloan students who care about sort of climate and, less carbon-intensive energy, and can they come together, learn enough about the technology, learn enough about how do you manage people and run organizations, et cetera, and together, working together, creating a cohort of people who have skills that would be unmatched. And you could do it around health, you could do it around advanced manufacturing, you could do it on so many different areas. And again, it's not just like the technical and commercial, it's the human side that we were talking about earlier. I think if we do that, our graduates will find that pathway not as narrow as others. I don't know if that's possible for everyone, just because of what's going on in the world, but I know it's possible for us. And I really believe in the power of demonstration projects. So I think that if we can show that it's happening, that's why I think the new educational initiative is such a cool thing that's going on here as well. If we can demonstrate its possibility, then maybe others in their own ways could also learn and do something. That's what I think.
No, I totally agree, because surely one thing that's happening is that narrow technical skills are just they're going to become obsolete so quickly that that's not the way for higher education to bring value to students. And you mentioned the EPIC framework, which I like on its own, but also I like having MITHIC and EPIC. I definitely think that those are key skills, but I think leadership. I think leadership is a key skill as well. So the way I imagine high-performing humans in the age of AI is, part of what you need to do is lead a team, which is going to include humans, but also AI.
Yeah.
And because more broadly, AI is going to be very good at accomplishing tasks, but humans are needed to provide the judgment to decide what tasks are worth executing on. And that is a human problem, and it's a leadership problem. So I think there's no question that we need to collaborate, and that we need to make it the case that you leave MIT with this sort of skill. And I don't think we need to abandon the idea that we're the world's top technical institution, because I think part of what it means to be a top engineer in the age of AI is to have these skills.
I 100% agree with that. And I think this is actually a really, really important message, is if MIT is the institution that is saying it's not just technology, it's also the human values, it's the human reasoning, it's how do we interact with one another, people will listen to that because they say, oh yeah, of course. So they believe it as opposed to coming from elsewhere. And I believe it's actually an incredible opportunity around leadership, but also around values. When I think of MIT Sloan's mission is to develop principled, innovative leaders who are going to improve the world. That's what we're about. That's what we say we're about. And so if that's what we're about, then of course we have to give a cutting-edge education so people can, do well by themselves, get good careers, et cetera, but also go and implement that mission, make the world a better place. For them to do that, they have to be good leaders. They have to really understand, the complexity and the richness of, humanity, et cetera. And they have to have not only play a leadership role, but actually have an anchor around values. And one of the things that I have loved about coming back, going away and coming back, it's not like you don't see the warts of the Institute. Of course you do, right? But you appreciate what makes this place so special. And it's a community of smart people doing important work, but who are anchored with really great values. And I think that that's an asset that we don't talk about enough, but we should. And so I think building on the human side of enterprise, as I broadly described it, is key not only for Sloan, but I think it's key for MIT.
Yes. Now, here's something that sometimes worries me. So I totally agree with everything you said. I was once talking to someone who thinks a lot about AI and the future of the labor market and the age of AI, and I shared a version of what you're talking about, and here's what he said. He said, yes, but I'm just worried that when there's a career fair and representative of Google or some other big company is getting to know students, the thing they're really going to care about is whether they have the latest technical skills and whether, they seem like, just an interesting person, a good person, but that at the end of the day, companies aren't going to prioritize the things we're talking about. And of course, if that's true, then students are going to notice and they're not going to value them. So do you think that what this person said is right? Or do you think that companies really, truly will value these skills to the point that they're going to convey that to prospective candidates?
Yeah, so I can't speak for all companies, right? But I think that your interlocutor is wrong.
Good.
And so some of you know this. Prior to coming back, I worked at Apple. I ran their corporate university, which is an interesting place because it recruits faculty who are like tenured faculty at leading universities, as well as practitioners who come up through the ranks of Apple and who are software engineers or hardware engineers or marketing people who have a passion for education. And what I saw there is, of course, the essential requirement is if you were going to be hired, you knew your stuff.
Of course.
You were good at technical or functional, et cetera. But what they also were looking for is not, they just expect that if you're hired, you're good, you're top of your game at a technical level, but they were looking for something else. And that something else is, can you work well with other people, since work is cross-functional? You're working in teams all the time, different teams, to get things done. Do you know how to do that? Do you know how to bring people along? Do you know when to lead and when to sit back and let other people lead? And are you guided by a set of core values that at Apple are really, really important? People were flushed out, not because they weren't good technically, but because they didn't align with what the values were of the company. Now, I can only speak about that one company. I don't know how it is exactly in all the other companies, but I think it's that combination is what people are looking for. And that's a combination that MIT is very well positioned to deliver.
I love that. I love that just as an aspiration for MIT, so that it just be taken for granted that if you graduate from MIT, of course you're going to know your stuff. Of course you're going to have the top technical skills in the world, but you're also going to have that extra element. Of course you're going to be an excellent leader. Of course you're going to have a moral compass. Of course you're going to understand the human side, the social, ethical, political, economic context. I love that.
Because of the education that we can deliver as we're reinventing the education.
Yes.
We don't exactly deliver on it yet, but we're getting there.
But that is the vision, and I think that MIT can be part of that vision. This is very exciting. Okay, I like where we've gotten to so far. Let me change tacks a little bit and just ask you about how you got to this point. So as Sally mentioned, you actually got your PhD in political science at MIT.
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that led to the next steps in your career?
Yeah, so one of the things when we're talking about labor markets and jobs is, I think it's important for people to realize that it's not linear. It's actually really non-linear, and that's a good thing because you pick up different skills. So I studied here in MIT Political Science, amazing department.
I understand it's a good department. That's what I hear.
It's an excellent department. Did you hear that, Mr. Provost? It's an excellent department, and I specialized in political economy. And the work that I did was so MIT, which was I was studying initially how are industries adapting, restructuring to changes in technology and into market conditions. I did my dissertation in Italy. Later on, I did work in Eastern Germany, et cetera. But as part of the work that I did as a graduate student, which I loved, I was involved in some of these institute-wide initiatives. The one that I was involved in as a grad student was later on it became Made in America. It was called the Industrial Performance or the Commission for Industrial Productivity or something like that had grad students and faculty from all over the institute. And we were trying to understand the issue of American competitiveness in a changing world market. And so there was a lot of work being done in the US, but a lot of work that was done comparatively. And I was involved in that. And I learned so much by speaking and meeting colleagues in engineering and economics and the different parts of MIT. And I think that really imprinted itself on me, which was the importance of interdisciplinary work, the importance of being out in the world, in the field, and not just sort of sitting behind a desk and sort of gathering and analyzing data, and to be focused on the big problems of the day. And so that really guided me. Now, I was hired actually by Sloan, not by political science. Lester Thoreau was the dean, and he was hiring a bunch of people who didn't have traditional business backgrounds, because he too at that time wanted to reimagine what Sloan could be. And so a whole cohort of us came in who were non-traditional, and that was great. And I had the great fortune of teaching both in political science and at Sloan, and eventually as serving as the head of the Department of Political Science, which continues to this day to do this amazing work, which is integrated with the rest of the Institute, that has real impact in the world. And I thought that was super important. So that really shaped me.
I mean, I'm excited about the fact that that you came back to MIT for many reasons, but I think one of them is connected to that. The fact that you just have a perspective that is much broader than what you would expect, not just because your PhD is in political science, but also because, as Sally said, you served as provost, and you served as dean at Apple University, which is a very different kind of institution than Brown or MIT. So could you say a little bit about how that broad perspective has shaped your vision of Sloan, and also what surprised you now that you've been on the job for a little bit? What have you found now that you're here that you didn't expect?
Let me answer the second question and go to the first one. What surprised me, the pleasant surprise, is just the incredible community. Coming back and being able to work every day with a group of colleagues, whether faculty or staff or students, who are bright, doing good work, have good values. I mean, I come to work every day with a bounce in my step. I pinch myself that I get to work here because it's such an amazing community. And I always knew it was great. I forgot how wonderful it was. And I think that's something that we have to just remember. Sometimes we take it for granted. In today's world, that we have the luxury of doing what we do here is amazing. So that's the wonderful surprise. The less than wonderful surprise is our systems are still terrible, and you can't, how many faculty do we have? And you have 3 different sources of information, on it. So, I know we're working on it, and it's just part of the beauty of MIT, of that. I think what I learned in these other experiences, which I hope will shape how I try to do the work as dean, at Brown as provost, provost is a really tough job. And because you really are the CEO and you're the front line of so many of the challenges that happen, and you have to make unpopular decisions. You have to. It's part of the job. You're not going to make friends by being a provost. Real friends. Yeah, there's a lot of transactional, hey, and forget it, and stuff like that. And what I learned there was the importance of really going out and listening to people in the community, to the students, to the faculty, to the staff, when there were tough moments and I was on the other side and they were yelling at me, or when there were common issues, et cetera, and being able to tap into the collective wisdom of the community is really important. You can't do everything. You have to prioritize. We know a lot, but we just don't know everything. And so how do we actually embrace the richness and diversity of our community and use that to inform us? That was the number one lesson I learned at Brown. And I think that's something that I really feel I need to continue doing here now that I'm back at MIT Sloan. And at Apple, I learned many, many things, and it's an amazing company. It reminds me a lot of MIT, actually. Filled with engineers, doing great work, et cetera. Many MIT people are there. But I lived in San Francisco, and I would take often the Apple bus from an early in the morning bus from San Francisco down to Cupertino. I was by far the oldest person on the bus, and most of them were the age of our MBA students. And while a couple of them were napping, what I noticed is that most of them were consuming content. They were listening to a podcast, they were watching a video, they were reading a short article, they were, doing something. And I was sort of watching this, and I'm like, we need to meet our students where they are, not where we think they are. We have to think about what are the different ways and bits and bytes that we can actually get people on their commute, in their work, whatever, to educate them. And so that's something that I hope to be able to integrate more in Sloan.
I totally agree. As you were talking, you described a recent Sloan collaboration, which earned us a couple of Nobel Prizes. And to me, that's a reminder that the potential for collaboration is not just in terms of contributing to the MIT of the future, but it's also on the research front. I mean, we together have, not all, but many of the Institute's social scientists. And I think that there is so much that we can do together, including understanding how to adapt to the age of AI, understanding, what the right vision is to help shape the age of AI, as you were saying, so that it's something that is good for society and not something that just costs us jobs. So could you speak a little bit about how you see the potential of this work in the social sciences?
So I think we have an incredible opportunity based on the strategic initiatives, presidential initiatives that Sally and Anantha have seeded in the last 18 months to 2 years, which is important, which is all about bringing people together around big issues. And I love that MIT Sloan faculty are integrated in just about all of them. I think that that's really important. So building on that, what I would like to see is how do we encourage our faculty and students to get engaged in projects, whether it's around climate or energy, or whether around health, whether around the Human Insight Collaborative, where we're doing work together. Because at universities, I think you all know this, if you really want people to get together, they get together really for two reasons. It's not like by serving on committees, because they tolerate each other when they're on committees and stuff like that. They get together when they do work together, when they do research together, or when they teach and mentor students together. That's the opportunity. And so now that we have this structure that's bringing people together, how might we deepen it by thinking about how we do more collaborative research, which is exactly what I had when I was a graduate student here. The experience I had as a grad student was not like what my other political science grad student colleagues at other universities were having. That's part of the MIT secret sauce. Let's do more of that. So I would like Sloan to, in any way it can, to deepen those relationships, and again, do more collaborative research, and even collaborative teaching, which I think is important.
Yes. Rick, thank you. Thank you for your remarks, but more importantly, thank you for your vision, and thank you for being back. Thank you for being back to MIT.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Great. Thanks. That was good.